Why am I not trading NFP? One of the biggest events in the market, aside of CPI interest rate, it's undeniable a lot of traders just seem to trade NFP every given time, despite of everyone knowing that it's one of the biggest news events and it is absolutely risky to trade it, and it is historically blowing up accounts. There was a trade taken overnight with this analysis, of course. This analysis was actually also shared in my Telegram, which you guys can join also. I got the link in the bio, so just make sure to click the link and you guys can join the Telegram where I'm sharing all of these important updates of the market, just as this live trade of the gold, taking a buying trend on gold and making some decent profits. I mean, at least a 2% profit before the NFP, because of course, as the NFP event is arriving and the closer we get to the NFP, if you have any running trades, at least an hour before or 2 hours before, you do prefer closing the trade. And there are actually some very detailed reasons of why you want to completely stay away from the NFP. NFP itself is historically known to be one of the biggest events in the entire economical calendar. CPI is also considered very high impact news. Interest rate just as well also considered very high impact news. But NFP is certainly one of the news events that is notorious of being the biggest account blower for retail traders. One of the biggest reason I do want to prefer closing the trade is really the effect that I could get on trades, such as the market gaps. Like, even if this trade would be running all the way to the take profit and I would not close my trade at least an hour to 2 hours before the NFP, and let's say I would just place the trade to a break even, I am still actually putting myself at a risk of the NFP event. Because what happens if, let's suppose the NFP will be completely pushing the market to the bottom side and it will just completely make a massive impulsive move. Even if my stop loss is at a break even, and even if I'm trading with the best market execution broker in the planet, I am actually still putting myself at the risk of potential slippage due to the counterparty on the other side of the NFP simply not exactly matching with my trade. So I do know that the broker I'm using is completely no market manipulations. However, still, despite of a broker that you might be using that doesn't have any market manipulations, the market itself, the actual market itself, is still potentially causing some problems with sudden movements and of course market gaps which could potentially lead to some platform issues and also platform system breakdowns. So a lot of issues just come from even getting near the NFP event. And not just speaking of NFP event, but speaking of any given news event, like even the CPI, which is another high impact news, or interest rate, all of the major news events. If you get near those events, you're every single time at the risk of having a market gap slipping your trade. And why would a potential slippage cause me a problem on this trade even if I'm at a break even? How is it possible that a potential downward movement from NFP is causing a slippage? Even if the trade is placed at break even, if the market happens to gap over my stop loss and the actual price reopening after the NFP data is being published, if the price difference is so big, so for example, if the price difference is completely dropping all the way here to the bottom with a massive market gap of the entire market just repricing suddenly, in that case my trade will automatically of course open and be triggered at this new lower price. If for example a massive market gap would be reopening a new candle here on the bottom, such candle here, And despite having a gap here, I mean, especially having a gap here, it opens the entire position and it closes the entire position at a completely different price. And thinking that the initial break even would have been saving you from losing, you're at a massive risk of not only losing on the trade like 1 to 2% of whatever you might be risking, but who knows what, you might be entirely blowing up your entire account. So that's another thing why, of course, it's gonna be pretty important to stay away from this news event. And as I mentioned a moment ago, if you have any sort of running trades that is profitable, you will just want to make sure you're definitely closing it 1 to 2 hours before the market is publishing the NFP. And of course, all of these examples I have given and all of the reasons why I will stay away from it, these are mostly for real market execution brokers, which we only have a very few of, but in real market conditions. And I haven't even mentioned what if you're using a market maker broker, which is of course what most brokers are doing. Like the good 90% of the brokerage industry, they are just running B books and they are just a market maker. So you also have to count with the fact that the broker might be not only just putting you in a position where the trade might be slipped from the market conditions itself, but also your trade might be intentionally manipulated. Because all of these B-book brokerages, they are especially taking advantage of all of these high impact news events, because if they are going to be adding any sort of market manipulation artificially, you're not going to be noticing it. So we are speaking of any type of sudden spikes in the market or any type of artificial trade latency when you open the trade. And let's say you open the trade might be closing only after a much longer time. So all of these artificial manipulations are also putting yourself at a risk. I won't be naming specific brokers of which one is B-book and which one isn't right now. But what I'm gonna tell you is at least the good 90% is indeed B-book, and you're definitely putting yourself at risk. So it's really a non-negotiable factor in trading. Like, you just gotta stay away from all of these news events. You're not even benefiting anything from it. Like, thinking that one sudden large win is going to be benefiting you in any regard is absolutely wrong. And it's just something you do not want to do.